A scientist's evidence is thought to be reliable because it will have been tested and verified at every stage. This is not, of course, infallible, as scientists are subject to human error as much as the rest of us. A series of camel sculptures carved into rock faces in Saudi Arabia are likely to be the oldest large-scale animal reliefs in the world, a study says. When the carvings were first discovered in 2018, researchers estimated they were created about 2,000 years ago. This was based on their similarity to reliefs at Jordan's famous ancient city of Petra. Since the Soviet Union successfully launched the first man-made satellite, Sputnik 1, in 1957, about 5,000 more satellites have been put into orbit around the Earth. About 2,000 of these are active, and although the rest are now dysfunctional, they remain in orbit, together with parts from all the rockets that carried them there. These remnants are often referred to as space junk, space trash, or orbital debris. Change is inevitable in any sphere of life. Although the results of change can bring great benefits, the process of change can be intensely traumatic, involve loss of choice, power, and status, and when change happens in the workplace, it can even lead to loss of jobs. Many businesses and organizations use and model called the change curve to understand and manage how people react to change. In 1994, Microsoft's founder, Bill Gates, said that although banking is necessary, banks are really not. At a time when many traditional institutions and ways of doing things are changing, banking is changing too. There are now new ways of accessing loans and lending money. Thanks to the rise of alternative finance, people can raise and invest money outside the traditional banking system. Our widespread participation in social media in recent years has led to the emergence of what is termed social media influencers. These online entrepreneurs are people who have created a positive reputation amongst their followers for providing knowledge or expertise on a particular subject. The brands have seen them as a means of promoting their product or service to thousands and sometimes millions of people. Although it is difficult to take people back to the moon, it is not impossible. We can transport people, but the logistical challenge of keeping them there is a very different thing. However, we have two of the components necessary to make this work: power from the sun, and the minerals on the moon itself. Scientists and researchers are already busy working on this in laboratories. Birds have a variety of methods by which they are able to find their way across the flyways, year in, and year out. It seems that birds employ different geopositioning strategies according to the conditions encountered during migration. They seem able to use the position of the sun and stars, the Earth's magnetic field, smells, and even landmarks to find their way. We all know that too much information can be a bad thing. This is as true in daily life as it is in business. Filtering useful from useless information has become a growing problem, bringing confusion with it, but this is where data curation can help. Curating data involves finding and displaying patterns in large volumes of disconnected and messy data to create meaningful information. It is quite normal to feel under pressure, and pressure can sometimes be a positive force. It can make us feel energized and take action to get results. But if the pressure becomes too much and we tip over into the feeling of being stressed, then it can have negative impact on us and our health. However, stress is a very subjective phenomenon and it lacks a precise medical definition. One of the most mysterious and endangered fish in Europe is the European eel. Eels live very long and complex lives and during their lifetime will travel thousands of miles, transforming themselves as they go. They can grow up to 1 meter long and have long and snake-like bodies with one pair of small fins at the sides. They are secretive creatures and most of their early life at sea is a mystery. Everyone at some point can feel worried or anxious, homesick, or isolated because they don't just fit in. This often happens when you change your location or when changes happen to you, and the truth is that this happens to lots of people, and it's a normal part of life. It's been recognized that around 1/3 of students will experience poor mental health during their studies. The ability to work in a team is one that is prized by employers and educationalists. It is often requested in job advertisements and displayed on CVS. When employers list their most important skills for promotion, 86% of people list team working skills. These days, the willingness and ability to work with a group of people towards a single target has become increasingly important. Everyone loves a winner is a common saying, but surprisingly, people dislike losing more than they like winning, and it actually takes a lot to tempt us to take a risk. Psychologists and economists from Princeton University found that people do not like to bet money in a 50-50 situation unless they can win twice the amount they could lose. The conventional model of schooling emerged in Prussia in the 18th century. Alternatives have so far failed to teach as many children as efficiently. Classrooms, hierarchical year groups, standardized curriculums, and fixed timetables are still the norm for most of the world's nearly 1.5 billion school children. Since then, education technology, EdTech, has repeated the cycle of hype and flop, even as computers have reshaped almost every other part of life. One reason is the conservatism of teachers and their unions. But another is that the brain-stretching potential of EdTech has remained unproven. In 1953, Skinner visited his daughter's math class. The Harvard psychologist found every pupil learning the same topic in the same way at the same speed. A few days later, he built his first teaching machine, which let children tackle questions at their own pace. By the mid-1960s, similar gizmos were being flogged by door-to-door salesmen. Within a few years, though, enthusiasm for them had fizzled out. Peer checking is a very useful and productive way of developing your reviewing skills. When you read your friend's work, you are assuming the role of the reader and the teacher. If your friend's work is well written, then it will be fluent and easy to read, and you will have no problems understanding the overall content. People run for many different reasons, namely for fun, for exercise, to raise money for charities, and so on. Over the past decades, running has become an essential part of many health routines because of the publicity about its beneficial effects. It is claimed that it is good for our heart, it reduces stress, and it helps to prevent diseases like diabetes. A microbe can either reproduce by dividing, or it can conserve its energy and maintain only its most basic functions. One possibility is that in the unfavorable conditions under the South Pacific floor, the microbes could have been dividing very slowly over centuries. In this case, the microbes in the study may be the descendants of an even more distant past. In Abu Dhabi, where fresh water sources are very limited, sustainable water management is a high priority. The region receives on average just 120 millimeters of rainfall every year, but the country is seeing demand for water increase by almost 40% annually. In this situation, it is clear that Abu Dhabi needs to boost the efficiency of water use by increasing water recycling. Not all solar energy capture devices make electricity directly. For example, steam generated from solar energy can turn turbines, which then produce electricity. And, in what could be especially useful in remote regions, solar steam can desalinate water and be used in sanitation and equipment sterilization. A student exchange program complements formal education, while promoting tolerance, maturity, and independence, all highly sought-after qualities in today's competitive job market. Living in the host country, not as a tourist or guest but as a member of the community, is what makes the experience both challenging and rewarding. Writers may make the mistake of making all their sentences too compact. Some have made this accusation against the prose of Gibbon. An occasional loose sentence prevents the style from becoming too formal and allows the reader to relax slightly. Loose sentences are common in easy, unforced writing, but it is a fault when there are too many of them. Invaders, pirates, warriors. The history books taught us that Vikings were brutal predators who traveled by sea from Scandinavia to pillage and raid their way across Europe and beyond. Now cutting-edge DNA sequencing of more than 400 Viking skeletons from archaeological sites scattered across Europe and Greenland will rewrite the history book. Six decades after the British novelist and chemist C.P. Snow famously decried the gulf of mutual incomprehension between the sciences and the humanities, the chasm often seems larger than ever. Science has grown more technically demanding over the years, even as the shared public experience of art and culture has fragmented. Within wellness paradigm of care, there would still be a place for use of medications that help people feel differently, at least for a time, sedatives, tranquilizers, and so forth. And you would still want to fund science that seeks to better understand the many pathways to debilitating mood states and to psychosis, and yes, whatever biological vulnerabilities that may be present. Most bond funds have credit risk, which is the risk that companies or other issuers whose bonds are owned by the fund may fail to pay their debts, including the debt owed to the holder of their bonds. Some funds have little credit risk, such as those that invest in insured bonds or U.S. Treasury bonds. But be careful, nearly all bond funds have interest rate risk, which means that the market value of the bonds they hold will go down when interest rates go up. Salamanders are a group of amphibians typically characterized by a lizard-like appearance, with slender bodies, blunt snouts, short limbs projecting at right angles to the body, and the presence of a tail in both larvae and adults. With climate change, plants of the future will consume more water than in the present day, leading to less water available for people living in North America and Eurasia, according to a new study. The research suggests a drier future despite anticipated precipitation increases for places like the United States and Europe, populous regions already facing water stresses.